There once lived a poor fisherman in a small coastal village where the sea met the sand in gentle waves and the sun painted the water with gold each morning. This fisherman was very old, with weathered skin bronzed by decades under the sun, calloused hands that knew the feel of rough rope and fishing nets, and tired eyes that had seen many years of struggle. His name was Omar, and he lived alone in a tiny hut made of driftwood and palm fronds, barely large enough to shelter him from the rain and wind. Omar had been a fisherman his whole life, just as his father had been before him, and his grandfather before that. It was honest work, hard work, but it had never made him rich. Most days he would cast his nets into the sea 4 times, as was his custom, and whatever he caught would be his living for that day. Sometimes the catch was good and he could sell enough fish to buy bread, dates, and a little oil for his lamp. Other times the catch was poor and he would go to bed hungry, his stomach growling, wondering how much longer he could continue this difficult life. On this particular morning, Omar woke before dawn as always, said his prayers as his mother had taught him long ago, and walked down to the beach carrying his old fishing net. The net had been mended so many times that it was more patches than original material, but it still worked, and Omar couldn't afford a new one. The sky was just beginning to lighten, turning from black to deep blue, and the morning stars still shone brightly over the calm sea. Omar waded into the cool water up to his waist, feeling the familiar push and pull of the gentle waves. He cast his net with the practiced motion of someone who had done this thousands of times, watching it spread out in a perfect circle before sinking beneath the surface. He waited the appropriate time, then began pulling it in, feeling the weight and hoping for a good catch. But when he finally hauled the net onto the beach, his heart sank. There were no fish at all, only a dead donkey, bloated and rotting, tangled in his net. Omar shook his head sadly and worked to free his net from the foul carcass, a job that took considerable time and effort and left his net smelling terrible. Well, he said to himself, trying to stay positive, that was 1 cast. I have 3 more. Surely the next will be better. He washed his net in the sea as best he could, then cast it again. This time when he pulled in the net, it was heavy, and Omar's heart lifted with hope. But when he dragged it ashore, he found not fish but a large earthenware jar full of sand and mud. He had to spend more precious time emptying the jar and cleaning his net again. His shoulders ached and his stomach rumbled with hunger, but he refused to give up. 2 casts done, 2 more to go, he told himself. My luck will change. The 3rd cast brought up a collection of broken pottery and glass, sharp pieces that tore small holes in his already fragile net and cut his hands as he worked to remove them. By now the sun was rising higher, and Omar knew that the best fishing time was passing. Other fishermen would be coming to the beach soon, and the fish would grow wary. But he had 1 more cast, his 4th and final one for the day, according to the custom he had always followed. Omar waded back into the water, cast his net 1 last time, and prayed quietly, "Please, let there be something I can use. I'm too old and too tired to go hungry again today." When he pulled the net in, it felt heavy, and at first he thought perhaps he had finally caught some fish. But what emerged from the water was a large brass vessel, sealed with a lead stopper that bore strange symbols and markings. The vessel was old, covered in barnacles and sea growth, but the brass underneath still gleamed dully in the morning light. Omar examined the vessel curiously. It was beautifully made, with intricate engravings and decorations despite its age. Well, he thought, this might be worth something. I can clean it up and sell it in the market. Surely it's made of valuable metal. He decided to open it first, thinking there might be something valuable inside. He worked at the lead stopper with his fishing knife, prying and twisting until finally, with a loud pop, the seal broke and the stopper came free. Immediately, thick smoke began pouring from the vessel's mouth. It wasn't normal smoke but something dense and strange, colored in swirling shades of green and black and purple. The smoke rose into the air, more and more of it, far more than could possibly have fit inside the vessel, forming a massive cloud above Omar's head. The fisherman stumbled backward in fear, dropping his knife, his heart pounding as he watched the impossible sight before him. The smoke began to take shape, solidifying into an enormous form. It was a Jinni, a being of smokeless fire and ancient magic, so huge that his head seemed to touch the clouds while his feet remained on the beach. The Jinni had blazing eyes like burning coals, a fierce face with a wild beard, arms as thick as tree trunks, and an expression of terrible anger. He looked down at the tiny fisherman and spoke in a voice like thunder that made the very air tremble. "There is no God but God, and Solomon is his prophet," the Jinni roared. "O great Solomon, forgive me. I repent of my rebellion. I will never disobey you again." Omar, terrified beyond measure, somehow found his voice. "O mighty one, Solomon has been dead for nearly 2,000 years. Who are you, and why were you in that vessel?" The Jinni looked down at Omar as if noticing him for the first time. His eyes narrowed dangerously. "So Solomon is dead? Then his magic has ended and I am free." The Jinni's expression became even more frightening. "And you, miserable human, are the one who released me. Know that I am Sakhr, one of the rebellious jinn who defied the great King Solomon. For my defiance, Solomon trapped me in that brass prison and sealed me with his magic, then cast me into the depths of the sea. I have been imprisoned for 1,800 years. Omar's mouth was dry with fear, but he tried to speak respectfully. "Then surely, O mighty Sakhr, you should thank me for releasing you from such a long imprisonment. I am only a poor fisherman who meant no harm." The Jinni laughed, but it was a terrible sound without any warmth or humor. "Thank you? Oh, I have a gift for you, fisherman, but not the one you hope for. Listen to my story. For the first 100 years of my imprisonment, I swore that whoever freed me would be rewarded with all the riches of the earth. But no one came. For the second 100 years, I swore that whoever freed me would be granted 3 wishes for anything they desired. Still no one came. For the third 100 years, I promised whoever freed me would be made a king ruling over vast lands. Yet still I remained trapped in darkness." The Jinni's eyes blazed brighter with each word. "After that, my patience ended and turned to rage. I swore that whoever finally freed me, I would kill in the most terrible way possible, though I would grant them the mercy of choosing how they wished to die. You have freed me after 1,800 years of imprisonment, fisherman, and I will honor that vow. So choose, how do you wish to die?" Omar felt ice run through his veins. After all his years of poverty and struggle, all his hard work and honest living, to die now in such an absurd and unfair way seemed unbearably cruel. But as the shock began to fade, Omar's mind started working. He had spent his entire life solving problems with limited resources. He had survived poverty, hunger, storms at sea, and countless difficulties through cleverness and careful thinking. Perhaps his wisdom could save him now where his strength certainly could not. "O great and powerful Sakhr," Omar said, keeping his voice steady despite his fear, "I accept that you must keep your vow. But before I choose how to die, may I ask you one question? I mean no disrespect, but I am a simple man and there is something I don't understand." The Jinni looked suspicious but curious. "What question?" Omar gestured at the brass vessel lying on the sand. "That vessel is no larger than my hand. You are so enormous that your head reaches the clouds. How could you possibly have fit inside such a small space? Forgive me, but I find it very difficult to believe. If I'm going to die, I would at least like to understand this mystery." The Jinni's pride was immediately pricked. "You doubt my words? You think I lie?" His voice rose in anger. "I was indeed inside that vessel. I am a Jinni, and we can change our size and shape. There is no trickery about it." Omar made his face look apologetic and uncertain. "Oh, I'm sure you're telling the truth, mighty one. It's just that my simple mind cannot comprehend such a wonder. How could someone as vast as you compress himself small enough to fit through that narrow opening? It seems impossible, though I'm certain you wouldn't deceive me." The Jinni's ego was now fully engaged. He was furious that this insignificant human questioned his truthfulness. "You want proof? I'll show you proof, foolish mortal. Watch." In an instant, the Jinni's enormous form began to dissolve back into smoke. The smoke spiraled downward, becoming a smaller and smaller funnel, and flowed back into the brass vessel until every wisp had disappeared inside and only silence remained. The moment the last of the smoke entered the vessel, Omar moved faster than he had moved in years. He snatched up the lead stopper from where it lay in the sand and jammed it back into the vessel's mouth, sealing it tight. Then he grabbed the vessel and his fishing knife and quickly carved new symbols around the seal, strengthening it as best he could while muttering every protective prayer he could remember. From inside the vessel came a muffled roar of rage. "What are you doing? Let me out! Let me out immediately!" The vessel shook and rattled in Omar's hands, but the seal held firm. Omar sat down on the beach, his heart still pounding but a smile beginning to form on his weathered face. "Oh mighty Sakhr," he called toward the vessel, "now I believe you. You truly can fit inside this small space. How remarkable!" The Jinni's voice came from the vessel, now trying to sound conciliatory. "Very clever, Fisherman. You have proven yourself wise. Now let me out, and I promise I will make you rich beyond your wildest dreams. I was angry before, but you've taught me a lesson. Release me, and I will grant you 3 wishes." But Omar shook his head, even though the Jinni couldn't see him. "I'm afraid I can't do that, mighty one. You see, I'm just a simple fisherman, but I know a few stories. I know that jinn are bound by their oaths in ways that humans are not. You swore that whoever freed you would die. If I release you, you must fulfill that vow, no matter what promises you make now. Your own honor would compel you to kill me." The Jinni was silent for a moment, then spoke again, more desperately. "You're right, Fisherman. I cannot break my sworn oath. But surely we can negotiate. What do you want? Tell me, and perhaps we can reach an agreement that satisfies both of us." Omar thought carefully. His wisdom told him that trying to bargain with a Jinni who had sworn to kill him was extremely dangerous. No matter what promises Sakhr made, the Jinni's oath would eventually force him to fulfill his vow of murder. But Omar was a merciful man, and the thought of keeping any creature imprisoned for another 1,000 years troubled his conscience. "I'll tell you what I'm going to do," Omar said finally. "I'm going to take this vessel and throw it back into the deepest part of the sea. Perhaps in another 1,800 years, someone else will find you. But I'll leave a warning carved on the beach rocks here, telling future fishermen never to open a sealed brass vessel they might find. With luck, you'll remain there forever, and no one else will have to die because of your anger." "No," the Jinni screamed. "Not back to the darkness. Not back to the silence and the endless years. Please, Fisherman, have mercy. Isn't there anything I can do to earn my freedom?" Omar stood up and began walking toward the water, carrying the vessel. "I am having mercy," he said quietly. "I could smash this vessel on the rocks and perhaps destroy you completely. But I'm choosing to return you to imprisonment instead of death. That's the only mercy I can safely offer." As Omar waded into the water, the Jinni's voice became more desperate. Wait. There is one thing. I am bound by my oath to kill whoever freed me, this is true. But I am not bound to kill you. You did not free me, you re-imprisoned me. The one who freed me was the person who originally pulled up the vessel. You simply opened an already found object. This is a different thing entirely." Omar paused. The argument was clever, but was it true or just another trick? His wisdom told him to be extremely cautious. "Even if what you say is technically correct," he said, "how can I trust you? How do I know you won't find some other reason to kill me the moment I release you?" The Jinni's voice became formal and serious. "I will swear by the most great name, by the 7 heavens, and by the throne itself that if you release me, I will not harm you or any human in this village for 100 years. This oath I cannot break, not even if I wish to. Release me, and I will reward you appropriately for your mercy and cleverness before I depart to trouble you no more." Omar considered this carefully. An oath sworn by the most great name was the most binding promise a Jinni could make. If Sakhr swore such an oath and broke it, the consequences would be terrible for the Jinni himself. Omar's wisdom told him that this oath, at least, could be trusted. "Very well," Omar said slowly. "Swear your oath aloud 3 times, clearly, so that heaven and earth can witness it." The Jinni spoke the oath 3 times, his voice resonant and formal, calling upon powers that made the very air seem to shimmer. When the 3rd repetition was complete, Omar carefully worked the stopper free from the vessel's mouth. Once again, the smoke poured out, forming into the enormous shape of Sakr the Jinni. But this time, instead of threatening, the Jinni bowed low toward Omar. "You have my thanks, Fisherman. Your wisdom has saved your life and earned my respect. Few humans would have thought so quickly or acted so cleverly. I truly intended to kill you, but your intelligence defeated my anger." Omar bowed in return, though his heart was still beating fast. "And you have taught me that even great power must yield to wisdom, and that mercy, even to enemies, can be its own reward." The Jinni reached into the air and seemed to pull something from nothing. A small leather pouch appeared in his hand, which he placed on the sand before Omar. "In this bag are 50 perfect pearls from the depths of the sea. They will make you wealthy enough to live in comfort for the rest of your days. Use them wisely, as befits the man who outwitted a Jinni." "Thank you," Omar said, genuinely surprised by the Jinni's generosity. "But tell me, if you don't mind my asking, why did your anger last so long? Surely 1800 years is time enough for rage to cool?" Sakr was quiet for a moment. "You're right, Fisherman. You're right, and I'm ashamed. The truth is, I stopped being truly angry after the first few hundred years. But by then I had made my vow, and I convinced myself that my honor required me to keep it. I confused stubbornness with honor, and old anger with justice. Your wisdom has shown me that there is no honor in harming those who don't deserve it, regardless of what vows I made in rage." The Jinni began to dissolve into smoke again, but this time the smoke rose into the sky rather than returning to the vessel. "I go now to wander the far corners of the earth, harming no one. Remember me, Omar the Fisherman, and know that wisdom is indeed more powerful than strength or magic." And with that, Sakr dispersed into the morning air and was gone. Omar picked up the leather pouch and looked inside. True to the Jinni's word, it contained 50 perfect pearls, each one worth more than he had earned in a year of fishing. With shaking hands, he gathered his net and the brass vessel and made his way back to his little hut, his mind still processing what had just happened. Over the following days, Omar sold the pearls one at a time, carefully, so as not to flood the market or draw too much attention. With the money he bought a better house, not too large or ostentatious, but comfortable and solid. He purchased new fishing equipment and gave his old net to a young fisherman just starting out. He bought good food and warm clothes for the coming winter. But he didn't spend lavishly or foolishly. His wisdom told him to save and invest carefully, to share with those in need, and to live modestly despite his newfound wealth. But more than the wealth, Omar had gained something far more valuable: a story. Word spread throughout the village and then to other villages about the fisherman who had outwitted a Jinni through wisdom rather than strength. People came from far away to meet him and ask for his advice. Omar would welcome these visitors and share not just the story of the Jinni but the lessons it had taught him. "Wisdom," he would explain, "saved my life that day. Not cleverness alone, though that helped. Not just intelligence, though I needed that too. True wisdom is understanding how people, and even jinn, think and feel. It's knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. It's recognizing that even enemies have pride and that pride can be used not just to defeat them but to help them see reason." He would tell people about how he had used the Jinni's own ego against him, challenging Sakr's truthfulness to provoke him into demonstrating his power. "I understood that the Jinni needed to prove himself," Omar would explain. "His pride wouldn't allow him to be doubted. So I used that pride to get him back into the vessel." But he would also talk about the mercy he had shown. "I could have destroyed the vessel or left Sakr imprisoned forever without a second thought. But wisdom also means understanding that cruelty and revenge serve no good purpose. I showed mercy because it was right, and in the end, that mercy was rewarded. The Jinni could have disappeared without giving me anything, but my compassion touched something in him, and he chose to be generous in return." Parents would bring their children to listen to Omar's stories and lessons. "You see," he would tell the young ones, their eyes wide with wonder at the tale of the Jinni, "strength and power are impressive, but wisdom is what truly matters in life. The Jinni was far stronger than me. He had magic I could never possess. But wisdom allowed me to survive and even prosper. Study, learn, think carefully about problems, understand how people behave, and you will find that wisdom can save you from situations that strength never could." Omar lived many more years, comfortable and respected, no longer casting his nets into the sea each morning but instead spending his days sharing the wisdom he had gained over his long life. The brass vessel he kept in a place of honor in his home, a reminder of the day wisdom had saved him from certain death. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, he would take down the vessel and look at it, remembering the terror he had felt when the Jinni first emerged, the quick thinking that had saved him, and the unexpected friendship that had formed between a poor fisherman and an ancient being of magic and fire. And he would smile, grateful not just for the pearls that had ended his poverty, but for the proof that wisdom, mercy, and quick thinking could triumph over even the most impossible odds. The story of Omar and the Jinni was told and retold across the lands, growing and changing with each telling, but always keeping its core message, that wisdom can save you when nothing else will, that understanding how others think gives you power beyond physical strength, and that showing mercy, even to those who threaten you, is a sign of true wisdom, not weakness. And the fisherman's tale became a lesson passed down through generations, teaching all who heard it that the greatest power a person can possess isn't magic or strength or wealth, but the wisdom to think clearly in crisis, to understand human nature, to act decisively when necessary, and to show mercy when possible. For wisdom, as Omar proved that morning on the beach, can indeed save you from even the most dire circumstances, and can transform enemies into allies if you're clever enough and compassionate enough to see the opportunity.